Steve Martinez, how are you, sir?
Good. How you doing, Matt?
Good, man. Thank you for coming. I'm really pumped about this.
I appreciate you having me on for sure.
You are the lead of Tradewinds, correct?
I am. Yeah.
Look at you.
Sadly, I grew up in this business. I say sadly, it's been a grind. Being born and raised in this business, I call it glorified farming. You have good years and you have bad years. I bought my dad out in 2006, so I had awesome. I'm in a king of the world in 2007.
Get out of here, Dad. You don't
got
even
this
know.
Figured out. Let me do my thing. And then 2008 just kicked my butt. And I had 4 years of just getting my butt kicked. And so, I say sadly, those 4 years were so instrumental. And I'm actually glad they happened at the front end of my career versus the tail end where it did so many others, because it impacted me in a way that I've run my business like I have another 2008 just around the corner. That PTSD is still very fresh in my mind because I got to see people that had been in the business for their whole lives lose absolutely everything. I mean, it was miserable. We can joke about it now, but at the time,
it's too soon.
It was, was rough. It was rough. And initially in 2008, it took out the guys that probably shouldn't have been in the business.
Sure.
And then 2009, it took out, more people, and 10 more people, and 11, people that I had grown up and admired my whole life. And in 12, I mean, it wiped out a whole generation of our industry. And then trying to claw our way out of it. Then we had brand new people that had never, been in a downturn. We had brand new people that, didn't know how to run a business. I mean, the following years, although they were, climbing out of the mess, were also equally just as hard. So,
and it's also not, for people that don't like developers, and there are plenty of them, it's also not good for homeowners when you're put in that position because, there's all the ever developing desire to cut corners, which good and lasting companies do not do, but that's not every contractor, right? There's always the contraction of what you're able to offer, right? My wife got me a barbecue. It was like the Captain Cook barbecue in 2007, whatever the hell it was, right? It had a rotisserie on it. And it was like, this is lit. It had an infrared burner in the back. Like it had all these things. And it was just that came with the model. It was like the Captain Cook, right? Yeah. And I remember in 2009, 2 years later, I was like, passing by a barbecue store and I was like, oh, I wonder what the barbecue, I really like grilling. Yeah. Going, none of them had the rotisserie. It was all extra. Yeah. Like none of them had the infrared burner, because they had to strip down what they were able to offer the customers. And they're like, and so then you're like, wait a minute. It's like 2 years ago, I paid $500 or $400 and I got all this stuff. They're like, well, now we don't have that. Yeah. We can add it on.
Stock it. And really, those 4 years showed our entire valley what no growth gets you. And I think people forget that. I think there's a lot of complaints about growth right now, and some, validated and some not. But I think those 4 years, I mean, when we always say if we're not growing, we're dying, and you hear that 1,000 times, but that truly was the case in the recession. What no growth, which a lot of people advocate no growth right now. But that showed that ripple effect of no growth, what it meant for everybody else in this valley. The ripple effect of growth, period, just affects so many businesses, and so many people benefit from the growth. And it doesn't even have to be people moving here. It can be people moving up. It can be, kids coming into the market. But really, I think people have forgotten what that no growth looked like back in the recession, and the stats that came out of, the ripple effect of how many homes are built, and then the people, when they're starting to use services and businesses and all those things, why so many people struggled those 4 years. So.
I know several legislators that are engaged in businesses that require growth, right? If you do window coverings. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Once you get your window, you don't buy new window coverings every 2 years. It's like, I need the new houses. I need people moving here that need Venetian blinds or something like that. Or
look at the gas station, Jackson's. If you go to a Jackson's, I bet 80% of the cars in that parking lot are from construction. When you look at the businesses around the valley, I mean, the ancillary businesses of window coverings and furniture, things that you have to have for housing, but then people working, the restaurants, and I mean, the ripple effect is gigantic and far more reaching than people understand.
You're in such a funny position in your industry because, again, as I've briefly mentioned, when people look at things they're mad about, it always comes down to growth, right? It always comes down to cost of housing. It's always like, we used to be able to get, a 5-bedroom, 4-bath for $75,000, and now it's, like $1 million. And the problem obviously is growth, and the answer is growth.
It is.
Right?
It is.
Like, the problem is the developers, and the solution is the developers. And so you're saddled with this community that is at once really frustrated that you even exist and are operating, but you also are the only hope that the community has to get back to maintain quality of life. Because there was a Middleton passed an ordinance. Okay, the school. Come on, you can help me with this. The school ordinance, where essentially if the school is
busy, they can't approve a project.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So if they're like, look, if the school is at like 110% capacity or something of that nature, then you can't build the development within that school bound, right? Yeah. And that's because they're like, listen, the increased development is degrading the quality of our existing services and our existing community. Okay, fine. No commentary on that.
Right.
But some people online were saying that it was a sellout to realtors. And I was like, this is a hot take. And the emphasis was, people are not going to stop moving to Middleton. Middleton is a great place to live. What we have done is artificially restricted the increase in housing stock, and that's going to artificially increase the cost of properties, which will increase realtor commissions. And I took a step back and I was like, okay, you're not entirely wrong, I guess, because you are going to constrict the building, which means Middleton, as long as you're not building more stock and as long as Middleton remains a desirable place to live, you are actually going to keep increasing the cost of housing in Middleton. The only option is like, okay, let's figure out a way to satisfy everybody, but you need like 1,000 more homes so that people moving in and people moving within and into Middleton have places to go. That's not going to create bidding wars.
Right. What people don't understand, there's no group out there advocating on behalf of home buyers. Home buying is a one-time experience, meaning after you buy, and I'd say with most people, and I don't mean it negatively, but after you buy, you really don't care about the next person until your kids are trying to buy or somebody you know. Sure. But really, you're not getting involved in a group. You're not going out advocating on, the first-time home buyer, trying to keep housing affordable. And I get really frustrated because at the legislature, at a city council, at a planning and zoning, even at the national level, people say, oh, you're special interest. You're coming in, you're just advocating, because you want to build. And it's like, the only way to get pricing down in a way that makes sense is to build more units. We're already underbuilt in this country, and it won't be that way forever. In fact, we get to a point in so many years that we won't be building, we'll be building more homes than there is people that need homes.
Isn't that like the boomers, like 15 years? It's like very sad, but once they start passing away.
And we do. We hit we crest over that, but right now we're, about 1 million units behind nationwide. And so I get frustrated because we're out advocating on behalf of affordability, and people think that's self-serving. When we say, hey, we need to get the cost of housing down, we need to get the cost of regulation down, we need to get the government out of certain things. House Bill 389 at the state level was a disaster for small cities that are growing because it really did cap what they're able to collect from a property tax perspective.
And Star is experiencing
it.
Very
Middleton,
painfully.
The bigger cities, Boise, they're not growing at the percentage of these other cities, so they're able to then work through that. But these smaller cities absolutely can't keep up with that. So you've got cities that are trying to deal with the growth, and so they're having to use impact fees, they're having to use hookup fees, they're using every funding mechanism that they can do, legal or not, and I tiptoe around that. I know the ones that are legal and ones that are not, but they're using
it's a gray area.
It is until it's not. And trust me, I know that
you'll have to tell me off air.
Yeah, I'll keep that one in my back pocket for now. But I advocate, and what's funny is I don't build affordable housing. Like we're a very high-end residential building company, and yet I'm at the city council level, I'm at the state level, I'm at the national level, pounding on the desk for affordable housing. And I almost go to,
Now, may I ask, I'm very sorry to interrupt. When you say affordable housing, there is a technical term of affordable housing, like, hey, you're going to build 100 apartments.
Right.
And you have to make 15 of those, quote, affordable, which means there's an income threshold where you can or cannot apply to it. Yeah. And then there's like attainable housing, which is like economically
housing.
Yeah. So when you're talking about affordable housing, you're advocating for.
So I'm actually glad you bring that up, because I think the word affordable housing gets lumped into everything.
Sure.
And there really is like all these, very clear lines of, are we subsidizing housing? Are we, what's your percentage of income versus the median income?
Right.
All those things. The point I always make, and my argument more is for workforce housing. And when I go to a city council and I'm bringing a project forward, I always ask, how many of your employees in the city can afford to live in your city? And usually the answer is very low. I mean, frustratingly enough, that's why we have sprawl, is because people have to move further and further out to be able to afford product. And so I'm advocating not on the subsidy component, and the cities look at that differently as to what affordable housing is. I think you have a homelessness problem, and you move up to like an affordability, affordable housing and attainable housing, and then workforce housing. What I'm advocating on behalf of is that first-time home buyer, somebody to get into a home. I'm born and raised here. My wife and I are born and raised here. We bought our first home, here for $130,000 in Eagle. Nothing builds wealth for most people more than a home outside of their business. And if you don't have a first-time home buyer who becomes a second-time home buyer, who becomes a third-time home buyer, selfishly, eventually I run out of clients. And so I'm always advocating on behalf of getting people in a home. Now, we have to educate people about what that first-time home looks like now, because it used to be, quarter acre, white picket fence, 2-car garage, all the things. Now it's probably a townhome. It's a different product. We have to re-educate people that, probably going to have roommates. You're probably going to have, my wife and I, when we were first married, had 2 roommates. So, it's not that far off of the spectrum, but I think we have to re-educate people of what that first-time home looks like.
And can I just say something? Like, I have an appreciation for what you just said, which is you're going to have to change your perspective of what that first thing, and you make decisions. Like, I have family members, they, their first home, they had roommates, right? And it's like, look, you do what you have to do. And it's possible that in the previous generations, excuse me, it was easier. And great. I'm glad you had that experience. But you also just have to, like, when my wife and I got our first house, we're very young. We were like 24, right? Yeah. And we worked literally, and it was, it was terrible. It was like December 2006. Right? Oh, and then of course, like you roll, I had every mentor I had in 2009 and 10 was telling me to like walk away.
Just dump it.
And I was like, I'm in it for the duration. Yeah. I still own it. Yeah. So I made it through that time frame
in that regard, because I think so many people just threw in the towel.
Right. And they did, but we were working 7 days a week. Yeah. We would get invited to things all the time. Like, hey, we're going to go to, Point Reyes, the beach, and all these awesome tide pools. It's like, I can't, like we worked 30-hour weekends because it was like, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then the week would start and we'd keep working. So I understand that we can look at our children and we can look at the current generation and say it's hard. That's true. It's not hard like World War II hard, though. Yeah. It's not hard like what the greatest generation had to do.
First world problem hard.
Right. Right. It's like, I don't want to work 7 days a week hard. It's like, I don't want to have a roommate hard. I deserve to not have a roommate. It's like, listen, man, the world is what the world is. And I'm not a developer or builder, but like as a consumer and just somebody who's always worked, it's like, yeah, man, it is hard, but like, God bless it. Like we're tough people. We can do hard things.
But with that risk comes the reward.
Yes.
It's funny because both my wife and I went to Boise State. I worked 3 jobs. I mean, I was labor ready on the weekend working the car wash. Every labor ready job I did on the weekends, I got offered a job. And I said, no. This is just making my car payment money. Right. Like I've got a full-time job. I'm going to school full-time. Like it was just that mentality. I think the other part of that re-education of people is for this next generation, and this is an age-old problem, but our kids want what we have. currently or had, and I think we have to say, no, you're going to have to live in not as great a condition as you're accustomed to now.
Right.
You're like,
this isn't your life.
Yeah, like,
this is my life. You're
I
sharing
created
it.
this for you, but this is not normal. And I think that's the one thing is just, I think you've got a generation of kids that have had it really good for a really long time. And mom and dad has provided for them in a great way. And I tell my guys this too, because I see a lot of first generation, here in the country legally. And then, their kids are, they want everything for their kids that they never had. The problem with that is the reason that these guys are so successful is they didn't have anything growing up and they wanted to get up, ahead of things in life. And so kind of getting off topic here.
No. I get I get where you're coming from. That was one of the big criticisms, but I actually worked with, Toll Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked with one of the C-suite guys, his daughter, SAT prep, right? That was my jam. And it was interesting understanding, especially in that time frame. It's like, yeah, look, you can say whatever you want about Toll Brothers, but the consumers were demanding really big products. Yeah. Like they didn't want, normal little starter homes. They didn't want, like a reasonable moderate size home. Like they wanted the big homes, and we were in the business of delivering. That. Like if you want a double, you don't, from In-N-Out, you don't make a business not giving people doubles. You're like, you want two? I'll give you two. Awesome. Here we go.
Let's go. What else do you want with that?
Right.
So.
And I think that comes back to people want what obviously they see, they want what they've experienced. And this is, again, I agree with you, a problem that every generation has. My grandmother told me this when I was like 24. Yeah. She's like, everybody wants the granite countertops right out of the blocks. And you got to start with, and she saw my wife and I like starting with a, 4-inch white tiles on the counter. It's like, yeah, man, one day we'll have stone or like Corian or whatever it is. But yeah, like now we have the crummy tile.
Right. Well, and that's the beauty of that too, is that, again, the wealth that you build from that first time home to the second time home, the tax code has allowed us to take tax-free gains up to a certain point. I mean, it really is built to help people get ahead. My fear is that we're going to become a nation of renters because the housing, prices are so high, and not that rents are any cheaper, but, people don't have that first leg up. And so, kind of back to your original, conversation of, we are the problem, but we're also the solution. There are several municipalities around the city or around the valley here that, invite us to the table and say, help us solve the problem. We realize there's no silver bullet. And if there was, we would have fixed it a long time ago. But there's a lot of cities and counties that say, we need to invite you. You guys build roads for a living. You build infrastructure, you build our communities. Help us get to a point where we can do this in an affordable way, in planning for smart growth. Growth for growth's sake is not the answer. There's no rubber stamp. No one's ever asking. Maybe a few guys are asking for that, but we want something that's sustainable as well. We don't want poor infrastructure to our projects. We don't want poor schools. We don't want poor whatever, because it makes it harder to sell our projects. So when they invite us to the table, I really do feel like you get that collaboration effort. Here's our struggle. How do we, meet in the middle?
Yeah. What you said at the end, that it makes it harder for you to sell your products. That is an articulation that overwhelmingly gets picked up. That sentiment, at the very least, is the industry just wants to make money. Right. And it's like, okay, hang on a sec, right? Let's throw out the word just. Does the industry need to make money to continue existing? Yes, absolutely. As does every industry in the history of the world. They have to make money. And let's start there, okay? Second, are there some, less than scrupulous people that have existed in the world in the building industry? 100%. Like, as
there are in policing and education and, public policy. Lawyers. Throw a dart, right?
Yeah. Everybody's going to suffer from this. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, okay, look, is there a world where people can recognize that, or just get to the point to say it's possible the developer might want to make a living, might want to make a good product, and might be happy when there's all of this win-win-win, where it's, like we're building schools, we're upgrading infrastructure, we're doing these things, we're happy with what has happened here because, by the way, you live here too.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, it's not like you live in Arkansas and you're like, let's trash on Idaho.
Right.
It's like, no, man, I live like 5 miles away.
And what people don't realize, there's a very few builders that build thousands of homes in the state, right? Like most builders are building 10 to 50 homes a year. So the builders have this like negative connotation that we're raping and pillaging the land. And that just isn't the case. There are some bigger builders, and I'm not saying that that's what they're doing.
Right.
But, you know, we build 10 homes a year, 12 homes a year. Like I'm not creating a product. I'm not even replacing the old stock with what we're putting in from the new stock. But I'm also have a name and reputation. Our company has been in business since 1980. I'm born and raised in this valley. I live around all the homes we're building. Like, I think people forget that we're building communities, and everybody forgets that their home had to have been built at one time too. And so we were living in a subdivision one time that somebody was coming down and knocking on all the doors trying to get us to sign a petition to stop the next phase of this subdivision. And the beauty is I had grown up in the further subdivision as a kid that this guy was from. And I said, hey, just want you to know, I grew up in this subdivision. You know, the phase that you live in, there was a big effort to get those people to that subdivision not built. And so you wouldn't even live here if that had happened. And
Right.
I said, this next phase, they're doing the same thing that this phase was. It's nothing any different. It's just adding more units to the subdivision. And you know, he sat and thought about it for a minute. And I said, I just want you to know those same arguments you're making now were made when your when your phase went in, and you wouldn't even live here if somebody like me hadn't said, stop, no, I'm not signing this. We've got to, allow for this growth. And it's just the sustainability component. If you just shut growth down, doesn't work. And back to your point of, elevated prices. Let's say we stop growth today. What do you think that's going to do to pricing? What do you think that's going to do to property taxes? If you reduce the supply, the demand doesn't go away. But if you reduce the supply, and I've had this conversation with legislators, with county commissioners, where they want to stop growth. And I say, because the price of housing is getting so expensive. And I'm like,
that's the best. I want to stop growth because it's too expensive.
Yeah.
It's
I'm like, well, Econ 101. I'm not an econ major.
And me.
Yeah, but my econ teacher would have told me that if we restrict the supply and we have still the demand, all you're going to do is blow prices out of the water and make it even more unaffordable. Yeah,
the first year I moved here, and when I got the podcast rolling in 22, one of the big snafus was AJ Osborne from not Cedar Creek.
I know him. Yeah.
He does luxury RV boat storage, whatnot. And there's a spot very close to here that he was trying to get a project, going on. And people in this area got really, really mad because they're like, no, like I didn't move here for, to have an RV storage or to like have this area developed. And what's humorous, obviously, is all you have to do is look up and you see all the hills on the ridge, or all the homes on the ridgeline. And you're like, I wonder if they moved here to see this whole valley, see this whole valley develop. Like, because their views used to be of this commanding value that I'm sure like the fog rolled in on. And like when the frost came, it was gorgeous. Like I can only imagine what it looked like. And I'm not saying that it looks terrible now, but it's certainly not what people saw when they first bought their homes. And it's like, this was like a farm, right? Like we're aware the ranch, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I'm always shocked when I go to a public hearing of how many people, and it's
and I signed the petition, by the way.
Yeah, probably. Probably. I believe it.
No, I actually had AJ in to like, he showed me renderings. He showed me actual pictures and I was like, wow, man, he brought up the issue of forcing labor onto a farmer or somebody working the land. It's like, they're going to have to pay property tax a month. If they don't want to farm that anymore and they have to pay property tax on it, you're literally forcing labor onto them because they can't sell it.
And let me tell you this, it's private property rights. What somebody wants to do with their private property is, I mean, I get kind of annoyed because everybody's so conservative in Idaho. And I'm like, awesome. Okay, you're conservative. But one of the biggest things of being conservative is private property rights.
Right.
Leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. And that's just not the case. AJ lives just around the corner. And like when he's building these projects, they're right in his community.
He can see it from his yard.
Yeah, he's got to drive by it every day too. Like it's not that he's putting in crap. He's not running this, you know. The other thing is when you do these projects of affordable housing projects or workforce housing projects, there's this mentality that it's going to, you know, the community is going to go to crap. I mean, I had a gal in one of my hearings say, you know, I'm not going to let my kids play with those kids. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, what are you talking about? This product's going to be way more like expensive than yours. They'll probably feel the same way about your kids. They don't want anything. I said, like, this is ridiculous. I can't even believe you're having this conversation. But
yeah, watch out for those crazy 6-year-olds.
Yeah, like, holy crap. But it's just interesting that there's this mentality that by building more units, by building, you know, affordable housing, by building a product that's, you know, some form of affordability, that the neighborhood's going to go down in value. That there's not one study across this whole country that shows that when those projects come into an area, that things go, you know, to hell in a handbasket like they're proclaiming. They also don't complain about the extra Costco. They don't complain about the new In-N-Out burger and the new theater and the shopping center that goes in because of the rooftops that they need to be able to justify coming in. And so they usually complain about two things with growth. It's traffic. Right. And we do have a traffic problem. Let's not lie.
Oh, sure.
I joke with our clients that the good thing with Idaho is it's very conservative. The bad thing with Idaho is it's very conservative. And so we don't plan ahead. You go to some bigger markets, Vegas, Phoenix, you know, Salt Lake, they've got roads and freeways and highways that go to nowhere. You know, there's nothing that they're going to, but they're planning for the growth. That's where we want to see the growth go. And so that's where they're putting in, you know, the infrastructure.
Dude, that's wild. Phoenix seems to be like, people frequently ask, like, why'd you move to Idaho? I'm like, what, am I moving to Arizona?
Right.
Like, are you crazy? Yeah. It's like, what am I'm going to head to New Mexico?
Yeah, like what were my options? Yeah.
Right. Like, and mind you, like, I'm very, very happy to be here, but it was one of those things where, you know, Arizona has been the recipient of many people from my former state, and it's fine for those people that moved. Like, I had a buddy, Jake, who moved to Arizona when we were in high school. I'm like, oh, and I remember talking to him on the phone. He's like, dude, we have 2 air conditioners and there's a scorpion in my shoe. I was like, love that for you, Jake.
Great. You just solidified why I didn't go.
Right. Like, yeah, but it's, again, you do come up to this problem. I was talking to somebody the other day about impact and mitigation fees. It's like you have to, and on top of those, impact and mitigation, and then building moratoriums, like emergency moratoriums. And it's like, look, you can call an emergency 6-month moratorium for like an emergency crisis thing, like the sewer line broke, but you have to have the problem
plan in place
and a plan to resolve it, where it's like, I need 6-month break to go fix this rupture. Yeah. And if you don't have that, you can't just call these emergency things just because, right? And likewise, they're also not upgrade. Like somebody else said, growth can't pay for growth unless we get growth first, right? Like, and then you have the growth, we get the tax base, and then we improve things, right? It's not the other way around.
Well, and what's interesting, the growth paying for itself. We've done numerous studies here in the Valley. We actually did one, I think in 2005 or 2006. So when the market was just booming, okay?
Crushing, yeah.
We did one and we redid it in either 9 or 10 because we said, hey, what does no growth get us? You know, how is that paying for itself or not? And then we did a subsequent one after that in probably year, 16 or 15. So what we found is, you think about growth and what it's paying for. It's paying for infrastructure, right? It's paying for the sewer plant. It's paying for the water upgrade. Right. It's paying for all the, fire and police. And you think about what a sewer plant investment is. It's probably an 80-year, investment, meaning it's, the lifespan of that investment is
almost a century.
Yeah. Right. Let's just round up for, Then we looked at, okay, how soon does growth pay for that investment? So a 100-year investment, does it pay for it like in year 99, it finally pays it off? No, we found in years 7 through 10, those 100-year investments were being paid off.
But that's with growth. That's with a steady growth, right?
It's with no.
Oh, okay.
Because in year 1, so we always look at year,
sure.
Let's say 1,000 homes were built this year.
Great.
And so then we say, okay, 1,000 homes were built. And so 1,000 homes paid into the impact of that new growth.
Understood.
Right? Then property taxes pay the rest of that. So from years, from now to the end of time, those property taxes are sustaining that level of service. So,
That was 2005 before 389,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Correct. So what we found, though, is growth was paying for itself. But not only was it paying for itself, it was paying for itself in like 7 years. So what investment do you and I make? Do you pay your house off in 7 years? Do you pay your, cars barely get paid off in 7 years anymore.
Right.
I mean, you really look at these, and these aren't small investments. These are $100 million investments. These are, $50 million investments. And they're getting paid off in a short amount of time. Then we looked at what's the ripple effect of that. So, and I'm making up numbers because I don't have the study in front of me. Love to get it to you, but 1,000 homes built, you've got so many millions of dollars added to the economy in year one. Then in year two, you have a taxable event where now we're getting property taxes in year two through forever. So you have that millions of dollars that's added to, the role at that point. Then you have all the services. So, when you have people move into, let's say, Dry Creek, for example, you've got 1,000 people living in Dry Creek. They're now consuming services, whether it's home services, furniture services,
whatever it might be. Yeah.
Anything.
All consumers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you add what those 1,000 people are bringing to the community. The numbers are gigantic, and that's just looking at in year one or year one of building. But the ripple effect of that is gigantic for an economy, and people don't understand that. They don't see it. They don't realize that, hey, our roads can only be maintained at a certain level because of growth. Our fire department can only be, sustained at a level because of growth. You look at, City of Boise builds a fire station. They're not a, $1 million fire station. They're like a $5 to $10 million fire station because of the level of service that they're building for. So the level of service across this valley goes up because of growth. And people, again, they don't want to complain about the new park that got built or the new fire station that got built or the new, commercial area that got built. Right. You do want to complain about the extra 5 minutes it's taking them to get to those things. And we've been spoiled in Idaho for so long that we've had no traffic. It takes us 15 minutes to get anywhere in this valley, and now it takes us 20 or 30 minutes. And, it's all relative, right? You coming from out of state, a 30-minute commute is nothing. You're thrilled with a 30-minute commute, but for, kid like me, born and raised here, a 30-minute commute, it's the end of the world. And so it's just perspective. And I think people forget that. And even being here probably now, as long as you have, now that 30-minute commute is annoying. It's like, oh crap, I don't want to go clear across town. It's going to take me 30 minutes.
Yeah, it takes 25. Like if I hit all the lights, it takes me 25 to get to my studio downtown, and it's like,
and that puts you over the edge. And it's like, really, 25 minutes? Like that's nothing. And
like, I don't want to go down there again today.
I've got projects on all ends of town, and I'm like, maybe I'll do it Friday when I've got extra time. Like I just, so
the worst is going to evening events. It's because like I never go out anywhere. I'm not like a social. I'm not like a big group guy. I'm not like, I also don't join clubs. Like I don't understand large social settings, right? It's just, I don't get it. And so the thing that really sets me over is when somebody's like, hey, come to this thing. And I'm like, wow, they're like, it's 6:30 on Thursday. I got kids, right? It's like, I love my wife. I love my kids. I'm like, and I work all day, like from 5 to 5. And I'm like, 6. Okay. Really? Fine. And it's like 40 minutes away. And and so I got to leave my house at like 5:45. And then I'm just furious. Pissed, and I get there, pissed. And then I don't know why I'm there. Cause I don't know why people invite me to things. Cause I don't even know what I'm doing with my life, but I get invited. And then I get there. I'm like, I'm never doing this again. And then it's 40 minutes home and I'm just white knuckling.
Just pissed. Well, I've got friends that live in East Boise and we're in Eagle, and they're like, yeah, we're not coming to Ontario tonight. I'm like, I'm not inviting you to Ontario. And they're like, yeah, but it feels like we're going to Ontario. And I'm like, same. I feel like I'm going to Montana when I go to East Boise. Like, pack a lunch.
Dude, it's out there. Yeah. Like, it is just, it's out there. I have a friend who lives off of a Linder, and he says, he's like, dude, it's literally 45 minutes to make a left turn out of my neighborhood at like 5 o'clock. He's like, you're not getting it. He's like, I literally just make a right and go north instead of because he lives right next to state. So literally he's like trying to go left. He's like, I'll never make it. So he's like, he just turns up and hits 16 and like
goes all the way around. Yeah. And that is, traffic is the biggest issue in this valley. I mean, I really do think schools are right behind that. And the hard part with schools, and this is what what people don't understand. Schools are funded at the state level. And so, when we're in a municipality like Middleton, for example,
Sure.
And they want to put, a moratorium on building until, the school district is adequately, either funded or
Capacity. Yeah.
People really should be complaining to the state more than they are the local. The locals don't fund the schools. You've got CUNA School District has the same issue. Nampa School District has the same issue. There's also this mentality that every home you build has 2 kids in it, and that's just not the case. Statistically, it's a lot lower than that. It's under 1 kid per home, statistically.
I hear what you're saying, but in reality, like in practice, where's the state stepping up and being like, oh, Middleton needs a new school. Let's throw them $20 million. Like they're not doing that at this point. They are putting it squarely on the backs of the areas, which has implications. I had somebody running for school board recently, and we were having this discussion of like, okay, well, why is it bad for the community itself to pay for its own school? And she was like, look, honestly, what happens is you have some taxing districts that have a tax base that can't afford it. And those children will get a better education than the children that can't afford that. And we have many rural areas in the state of Idaho that just don't have large enough taxing bases to actually afford these things. And you will get haves and haves not that are literally engineered by the funding formula.
Well, and you think about that. I mean, you think about small cities across the state that could never afford those upgrades, the $50 million upgrade, right? I mean, there's just no taxable base there. Right. Even if they did an impact fee, which in Idaho, that's illegal for schools. If they did an impact fee, but they build 5 houses a year, that's not going to fund the $50 million upgrade. The other component to that is when the public knows that there's an impact fee being collected on behalf of schools, for instance, a school bond will never pass again. And that's because they feel like it's already being funded. You know what? That's gross problem. I'm not going to vote in favor of a bond ever again. And so you do get these bonds that run. And we've been supportive of school bonds in the past because we do feel like that's the public coming out. That's them saying yay or nay on is this a big enough problem that we need to fund it. The thing that I get annoyed with is when you talk to the legislature, they don't think that there's a funding problem. When you talk to the school districts, they do. And so this is a fight that I or you shouldn't be involved in. I mean, we definitely want to be at the table. We want to be giving them feedback. But the state is saying you've already got enough money to do what you need to. You just need to run it better. And the locals, the school district's saying, what are you talking about? We're at max capacity. We've got, hiring problem. We've got whatever. There's a dialogue between, the local and state that needs to be flushed out. And people don't know that.
You want another tricky one?
Yeah.
The impact fee argument is a good one, right? Don't collect an impact fee because then they won't pay for the bond. We have open enrollment in the state of Idaho. So, for instance, there's a school district, I don't know, let's call it the Middleton School District, that is quite favorable and people very much like it. Great community. Markey, the superintendent, does a great job. Like I know some of the principals over there, people really like Middleton. And there's a population in Middleton that's like, you know what? You want to know why our school district's over capacity? Because people are coming from out of the district, which anybody can do. Yeah. They come from out of the area and start going to these schools. They arrive at capacity. Then we have growth within Middleton, and now we're over capacity, and they will not be asked to participate in the bond. Because if you're driving from Eagle and you're driving all the way out to Middleton for middle school or high school because you really like the middle school or high school, you're not going to get taxed for the bond. So they're like, well, wait, we're passing a bond to fill the void,
on the backs of the citizens.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and when I heard that recently, I'm like, oh, they have a point. That's a real point. As long as we have open enrollment, how can you be sure that the people paying the bill are the ones getting the benefit?
Totally. And I think that's the frustrating part is that there's this misinformation out there that growth is the only cause of the problem in these jurisdictions. And that's not the case. But I don't think people understand the issue to the nth degree, that there's open enrollment, that it is a state funding issue, the bonding issue, is there impact fee or not? I think there's so many aspects to this. And I get that the educators get that and they understand it, but the general public, you look at bonds around the state and it's it's kind of sad to see, this, again, the good thing about Idaho is very conservative, but the bad thing is very conservative. You've got you've got a fire station in Star that is brand new and built, and they did not pass the bond to staff it. So you've got this brand new fire station that impact fees did pay to build, and yet they can't staff it because of the funding issues. Yes. And so
what a trip.
Yeah. Like it's frustrating to see, that, hey, we're trying to raise the level of service. We're trying to, create whatever it is,
right.
Better schooling, better
right.
fire, better police, better parks, better whatever. And yet the public, keeps saying no.
Here's something very interesting with Star that I fleshed out recently with one of the city council candidates rather. He brought in his property tax because Star was roughly at 10,000 people in 2020. Now it's at 24,000 people. So over the last 5 years, right before HB 389, they were at a certain tax rate. Okay. Because of HB 389, and all of the massive growth, his tax bill is literally something like 45% of what it was in 2020. I was like, so growth has paid down your tax bill, 100%. Right? So here's the real kicker though. The people that have moved in don't want their taxes to go up. So they keep saying our tax bills have gone up. We don't want to pay taxes, but they were never even here when they had high taxes because it's something like 60% of the population is brand new in the last 60 months.
Well, look at interest rates. Interest rates, when they were at 2% and 3% for so long,
right.
Now that they're normal at 6% and 7%, people are like, no way, I'm not buying a house at 6 or 7%. That's ridiculous. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's a normal rate. You're so conditioned. And this is those people are conditioned for that tax rate. It's like people that were conditioned for a 2 or 3%, a whole generation, the millennial generation thinks that 2 and 3%, interest rate is normal. And it's for a house. What was your first interest rate on your house?
Oh, dude, it was terrible. So I had a first, second, and third.
Yes.
So I was 24.
Great point. Yeah.
I had a first that was like 80%, that was at 6.5. I had a second that was at 9.5%, and the third. So it was like an 80, 10, and then 5.
Okay.
And I could only come up with 5% down. And the last 5 was at like 11% or something.
But I mean, that's what needs to be put out there is that, and I would say that with, whether it's taxes, whether it's, what were you paying for something 10 years ago, period. You don't think that's going to go up over time. And I think that's again, it's just that education component.
It's wild.
And so the other frustrating thing is when you look at the average age of a first-time home buyer now, you'd be shocked. It's almost 40 years old is the average age of a first-time home buyer.
This is frustrating to me for a number of reasons, but I think, as with anybody who gains a knowledge base in a certain area, you're like, listen, it's not luck. It's like, the guy who wins the poker tournament every year. It's like, it's not luck, right?
Lucky,
like it's how I play, right?
Yeah.
There are so many ways for young people to get into houses, like the FHA program,
FHA,
3% down payment.
Yeah.
Up to, I think in this area, it's like a $600,000 single family home. It's like you could buy, if you're 25, you could scrounge together $10,000 and purchase a $300,000 townhouse or whatever you want, and then get the ball rolling. There are houses right now in the city of Eagle that are like $400,000, and these are 2,000 square foot houses. That, and again, anybody who looks at that like, but it used to be 100. It's like that's fine. I get that, but at this point, you have to realize the barrier to entry is not. It doesn't have to be the down payment. Now, do you have to have a job? Yeah.
Right.
Might you need a roommate?
Right.
Yeah. Like, okay, great. That's all
what
true.
You want?
Probably not.
Yeah.
But you get your foot in the door, as you and I both did. You do what you have to do to get your foot in the door, and you move on. And you start that chain, because the alternative is, one of the big things, I read a lot of financial books when I was 22, because I was not very financially literate. I didn't grow up with any good training or any great, role models. So at 22, I graduate college and I go to Barnes & Noble back when, you would go to Barnes & Noble. And I remember just going to the financial literacy section and just buying a stack of books. And then I got Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And the second one had a list of books at the end of it, the cash flow quadrant. Had a bunch of books, and I went and bought all of them. Right. So it's like just consuming voraciously. But one of the big things I realized very quickly was like, listen, you pull the trigger now, or you're going to get into a shoot and you're not going to be able to pull the trigger for a long time. Because once you hit that like late 20s, now you want a kid, now you need to upgrade. Like you have to start hammering it early, because then you won't have a shot until you're like in your late 30s.
And too many people wait. And right now is a perfect example where you have so many buyers on the fence and they're waiting for rates to come down. And I'm like, well, that's awesome. But the second rates go down, prices go up. And you know why? Because everybody's jumping in, and you get back into that bidding war world. You get back in, it's supply and demand. So as soon as, we only have so much supply, but as soon as that supply gets eaten up and you get everybody back in the market, if rates went to 3% today, do you know how many people would jump off the fence and prices would be elevated like you couldn't believe.
Right.
What I'm trying to tell people is I always say, date the rate and marry the house.
Yeah. Everybody.
Get in there. You can always refinance. But if you pay 10% more for the house at the end, you can't
refinance out of that.
You can't refinance that down. But you can get into the house now while you have a little more buying power. Buying power, not because of rates, buying power because of
pricing
and availability.
I came up with this great little thing called the chicken curve. I don't anticipate you've ever, can I borrow this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it works out like this. It looks like this. And it kind of looks like a chicken, right? Like a little thing here.
Yeah.
Okay. So the idea is you start with prices where they are, and people are on the fence like, I'm waiting for the prices to go down, right? So then as they start to dip, they're like, okay, I could buy now, or it might be even cheaper in like a month. So they're waiting, then it bottoms out. Now everyone's scrambling. The prices are going up, and then it stabilizes again. And if you follow the chicken curve, it's like 9 times out of 10, you lose because you're going to end up buying above where it was in the first place.
No one's that lucky, right? No one, I always say, like, you got to be lucky twice, because you got to sell high and buy low. And no one does, like, how often does that happen in the stock market with you and I? When you don't do it all day, every day, there's, that is pure luck, and and no one's that lucky. I met with Chair Powell last year, and we were talking about the, inflation and trying to get inflation down. And what's really frustrating, and this is where he and I disagree, but where if you take housing or shelter inflation out of the inflation equation, we're at that 2% that he's trying to hit.
Yeah. But food, housing, and fuel, if you add them back in, we're getting obliterated.
Yeah. And so part of that is if you lower rates, that affordability becomes better for people to get back in the market. Right back to your chicken curve here, the problem with it is initially you lower rates, it gets less expensive, but then everybody jumps back in and it jumps back up. And so but over time that does level off but you're going to have this curve that is initially going to inflate the cost of housing because everybody's jumping back in.
Right.
And so,
but that's what we saw in, like people were waiting until about March of 2012. Once somebody fired the gun in 2012,
we had 10 years of just
gangbusters. And then, but it was like, okay, but the people that started, everybody was waiting for it to happen. They could have purchased. And then like we got very lucky and purchased in that time frame. It was like, we purchased a house. There were in the little neighborhood we were looking at, I think it was like 13 houses available. And we're like, and we like get one and like get the price, negotiate the whole thing. And within 2 months,
everybody that buys it at that time is like, I can't believe I'm spending this much. Like, this is ridiculous.
You must have been sitting at our kitchen table.
A year or two later, you're like, oh my gosh, we're the coolest thing ever. We know what we're doing.
I had to see an orthopedic surgeon. I hurt my shoulder patting myself on the back.
I do that every time we build a house or buy a lot. Like, I just can't. The first lot we bought was $55,000, and I was like, this is ridiculous. I can't believe I'm spending $55,000. And at the time I was looking at $25,000 lots. And so, our first home was a $55,000 lot, and I just was sick about it. And then 2 years later, when we sold it, our home was the smallest home in the subdivision, the cheapest home in the subdivision, built for that purpose. It was getting shown, 10,000 times a day. We got over asked, like it was dumb. And so I'm like, oh man, I'm actually a genius. Like I can't believe I'm gladly pay 55. And then the next lot was like 130. And I thought, oh crap, I can't believe I'm spending
I'll
this
never
kind
make
of
this money back.
Yeah, like what am I doing? And 2 years later we sold that house, and it just kept going and going and going. And I think that's where people, sadly, housing is not going to get less expensive. And if it does, that's deflation, and that's not a great thing for the economy either. So we have to be careful what we wish for in the, there's a few things in the economy that go up and down in price, oil being one of them, food being the other. But most things we want to continually see, price appreciation, because that means that it's a healthy market.
Yeah, even at 3%, just give me the rate of inflation.
Totally.
Just don't give me backwards.
Yeah. And so I think we got to be careful because we all want a cheaper house, but not if it means the industry I'm in also is making products cheaper and selling cheaper, and our affordability is, going down. And so I think that's where we have to be careful when everybody's pushing for cheaper housing is, I think if we can just get it to be sustainable to where wages catch up, and that's what, the wage conversation is a totally different conversation.
Yeah. Listen, Steve, I have a gajillion questions. I haven't talked to you about labor. I haven't talked like all of these different things. I know it's a working day for you. I don't want to take all of your time. Please come back. I don't care when you come back, if it's in a week or if it's in a year, but please come back because I would love to keep talking about these problems. Like we have larger, politically oriented problems like, labor laws. We have, I have President Gordon Jones from CWI coming on soon. I heard him speak, actually. I was very fortunate to meet with him and then hear him speak this week. And within the higher education world, everybody's talking like, well, we need to prepare our kids for like jobs that don't even exist yet in like 10 years, blah, blah, blah. And his commentary around that was like, okay, all of that's fine. But at the end of the day, what about preparing kids for jobs that we have right now?
Doing a phenomenal job.
Right.
And phenomenal job in the trades, in the, the opportunities that don't exist for other people of offering, just a wide variety of opportunities. We've got labor issues like you can't believe. We've got to your point, immigration issues like you can't believe, tariffs. I mean, I could go on for days, and those are things, I don't want to say outside of our control, but they're not things that you and I can just twist a knob and fix today. And so when you look at the myriad of issues that we face, I mean, the headwinds are beyond anything we've seen in the past.
Right. And this is when we talk about like a 24-year-old who can't afford a house, it's like, okay, we can blame the house, but what do you do?
Right.
Like how did you invest in yourself after high school?
Yeah.
Are you a welder? Like, are you just working menial jobs? Like, and again, no shade on people getting into the beginning of employment, but there is an argument for investing in, you can't even call it higher education anymore because people freak out. It's like, okay, do you want more nurses? Do you want more welders? Do you want more linemen? Do you want more skilled craftsmen? Like these are things that you don't just arrive with the skill sets.
Right.
And if you don't have the good fortune of growing up in the trades and learning those things along the way so you can get a job right away, or if you need an advanced certification so you even have the skill set, but you need to be verified that you can do it, like all of these things are considerations. And one of the solutions to the housing cost is making more winners within the community and more people we all gain. Yeah. I mean, it's like when you're paying a plumber $150 an hour, how long does it take you to wonder, how do I get that job?
Totally. And that doesn't get replaced by AI or technology.
That's the other thing. These are legacy jobs. They will be here for our generation, for the next generation, for the next generation. And yeah, I think I have a good friend who wrote a book recently called The Trade Gap, and he was, in AI and got his master's degree. Those people are scrambling like crazy to find relevance in jobs.
Doing.
You know who's not scrambling? Action Plumbing.
No.
Ken's doing just fine.
100%. And those are guys, we have a whole generation of people coming up that don't know how to change the light bulb. And I don't mean it derogatory. We just have been so focused on other things that changing your own oil and changing your filters and your, furnace and those like those jobs are going to be even higher in demand because people don't do things for themselves like they used to.
Right. I agree.
The baby boomer generation, I can fix that. I can take care of that. I can, I'm not going to pay somebody to do that when I can do it myself. And,
get my hammer. I'll fix it right now.
Yeah. But the next generation coming up is going to say, well, just call a plumber. Call an electrician. I'm not touching that. So
plus, dude, I moved recently and there was a light fixture that was broken and I took the globe off to fix it and it was a built-in LED. I had to
good luck with that.
I had to replace the entire fixture. I was like, what kind of chick? Like, oh, I was so mad.
They got you.
They got me.
Yeah, you had to buy another one.
And then, once you start replacing one fixture, then the wife is like, what
that
about
LED doesn't
what
match
about the
that
what?
LED,
Yeah.
so,
And then, no joke, we ended up putting in like 5 or 6 different fixtures. And it's fine. They look great. But I was just like, son of a, because fixtures are the most hateful thing to me. Fixtures and ceiling fans. Because like my shoulders are killing me. Like you're holding it up there and you're like,
there's nothing
you're trying
fun. And it's electricity. Like that's the other.
Then you're scared. You don't want to die. He's like, death is around the corner for a damn light bulb because there was a built-in LED.
Wife's like, should you be doing that?
Oh my God. And then the worst is like you're up there, you're sweating, you're almost done. And if you've ever had the experience where somebody's like, that doesn't look the way I thought it would. And you're like, don't you say another
I don't even want to hear it. Yeah.
She's like, I kind of like the others. Like, no, you don't.
Go out.
This house is burning to the ground with this fixture on it.
It's getting the life of our marriage.
Which is not going to be much longer.
Yeah, if you keep this up, you will have a new light.
Oh my God. God bless. Steve, thank you for coming in, man. I really appreciate your time.
The invite.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do it again.
Let's do.